How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel today. Championship prediction time. I don't know why I'm doing this myself, but this is going to be so controversial like it always is. I've tried to make this as fair as possible. I've swapped and changed it all around so much. It's still going to cause controversy, I know it is. Ultimately, it's not all about me. Let me know your predictions in the comments below, what you think is going to happen this season in the Championship. Oh yeah, please, just hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, it's free. So yeah, thanks a lot. Do it. 24th, we've gone for Rotherham United. It's standard procedure, isn't it? I trust in the fact that I have tried to make this as unique as possible. Or just not as boring, but you've got to go with this. Ultimately, they have lost their main goal threat, Michael Smith, who's gone to Sheffield Wednesday, got 18 goals in the last season. Freddie Ladapo has also gone, so there's plenty of big names that have left the club, and they haven't really done very well in replacing them. Connor Washington and Tom Eaves do not scream quality, they do not scream survival. I would like them to survive for the sake of football, to be honest, just to stop that constant yo-yoing effect. But ultimately, I think maybe one thing that will go for them is the fact that they are trying to break a pattern instead of on a downward spiral like the teams I put above them. In 23rd place, Birmingham City. It is time. We are finally going to predict Birmingham to get relegated. 6 straight seasons of finishing below 17th. How horrendously depressing is that? They are not in a good place at all with their ownership, constantly seeing reports of the fact that they may get a new owner and it just doesn't happen. John Eustace seems like an alright manager, but I don't see him lasting the season, especially with the situation that they're in. It's a bit of a gamble as well. He's not really got a huge amount of experience from being the first team manager of a club. Doesn't strike me with much ambition, in my opinion, and ultimately they can't really afford to sign players. They signed 2 players, both of them on loan. I just do not see it being a good season at all for Birmingham City, and it's sad because ultimately they should be doing way better. They're a pretty big club and they should be doing better than this, but ultimately I think they're going to have to wait for that. 22nd, Reading. Ultimately, they are very similar to Birmingham, been on a downward spiral for a number of years. Ultimately, they've lost John Swift, Rick Mortar, Josh Laurent. In total, their squad has only got 21 players. When I did the early version of these predictions a few weeks ago, they had 17, so they have signed a few, but not exactly the most groundbreaking signings of all time. Jeff Hendrick, Joe Lumley, Shane Long. Yeah, that's a bit dull, really, isn't it? Tom Ince has also come back into the team. Paul Ince staying put as a permanent manager doesn't really strike fear into the opposition, in my opinion. I do rate the signing of Tyrese Forner. I wonder why I say that, as he is a Forest lad, but ultimately I'm not even being biased in that sense. He is the player there that excites me the most. In 21st, just surviving the drop, Wigan Athletic. I think they'll just about have enough, you know. I think ultimately they've got that momentum, unlike Reading and Birmingham. And maybe you could say the squad isn't as strong as those two, but that's very, very questionable. They do have quite a lot of championship know-how in this team, and ultimately Wigan going down was on a technicality, and they've done an incredible job to come back as quickly as what they have done. You look at the likes of James McLean, Graham Shinney, I hate to say it, but it's a great player for this level. Tendai Derinkwa, also Josh McGuinness as well. They've signed Ryan Nabble, which is an excellent bit of business. Tons of experience with Blackburn, the last 5 seasons now being a regular for them, but ultimately they do need to do more. They need to do more. Maybe that is what could maybe separate them from other teams. Maybe that might be a reason to put them down, but I do think they have a pretty good vibe about the club, a pretty good model. Newly promoted, they're going to be on a high, whereas I don't think Reading and Birmingham are at all on a high, and I think that might actually give them a bit of a upper hand on those two. 20th place at Blackpool. I think a lot of people are doing this, putting them down a few places in the championship table after losing Neil Critchley, and ultimately it's their 2nd season. How will they adapt to being in the championship again? People know what to expect from them now, and ultimately, I say ultimately way too much in videos. But that phrase does actually work because Michael Appleton, I do not think, is anywhere near the level of Neil Critchley. He did do well with Lincoln a few years ago, but ultimately didn't actually get them promoted. And last season was part of a Lincoln side that were a shadow of what they were the year before. And it just doesn't really strike me with much ambition. The 2 players they have signed are both on loan. Reece Williams sticks out in particular. And ultimately, I just said it again. Bloody hell, David, be more creative. I just don't really see them doing anything special this year, and they have to try and keep hold of Josh Bowler as well. If they lose him, then I think it could be really difficult for Blackpool. 19th. Now, I'm a little bit reluctant to put this team this low, to be honest, because they're not even that bad. But I have a bad feeling about them. Cardiff City. They had a bad year last year, didn't they? They ended it pretty strongly, but I don't know. I think other teams have got the upper hand on them, even though they've signed some pretty good players. When you look at it, they've signed a lot of players, and I know you could say, well, you're a Forest fan, you signed a load of players. Are you going to slag Forest off in the Premier League? No, I'm not. So I am contradicting myself there, but there's a difference between signing a load of players that are quality and just signing them for the sake of it, or just them not being good enough. Forest literally did that a few years ago. I do like the signing of Rick Morta though from Reading, O'Dowan coming in from their rivals Bristol City, Allsop, Capri as well, Romero. This is just to name a few, but they have lost quite a big core of their team. Vaux, Flint, Pack been at the club for a number of years. They've gone. Also, Collins has gone to Derby. God knows what I'd go there. And ultimately, he is a striker. And I just think they do need to get another striker in because they lost Kiefer Moore in January. They had obviously Jordan Hugill on loan. They did actually thrive with Cardiff on loan last season. And really, besides, Isaac Davis up front, and they've got Waters as well. They're looking a little bit thin on the ground up front, so they do need to bring in another striker. They've got a lot of young talent in this team, though. Ruben Colwell, I think, is an excellent young player. I think everyone is aware of him. And I do think Stephen Morrison as a manager is a very good young manager, and he's got potential. But I think in time, it will work for Cardiff, and they will get back up the table. But I just have a feeling this season it's going to be another year of just not really moving forward, and it's going to be a very frustrating watch. However, I will make it very clear, I think Cardiff could be a lot higher than this, and I was close to putting them higher than this. 18th, Sunderland. I do think these guys have got a pretty good chance of having a good year this time out. You know, I don't really see them being in a relegation battle too seriously, even though they're only in 18th place. They could be higher. Let's not get carried away. They're a big club. They've sold so many season tickets. They're going to have a huge following home and away. But just because you have that, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful, and you do need the personnel as well, especially going up a division. I do think Alex Neil is an excellent manager at this level. He'll do a good job with them again in the Championship. Danny Ballard, though, is a good bit of business from Arsenal. Good young centre-back coming in for $2 million. Again, though, another team that's looking quite thin. 21 players in the squad, and they've only got one goalkeeper, by the way, Anthony Patterson. I do think overall, though, the future's pretty bright for Sunderland. Their overall goal is to probably try and aim to get back to the Premier League one day, but I just think they're quite a way off that, and I don't really know. I think some Sunderland fans might be really optimistic, but I think it will take them at least this season to really try and build a platform to push for that top 10 area of the table. 17th, this is probably the hardest prediction in the entire division in my opinion, because of just how unknown they're going to be with their new approach. Hull City. Now, they could be way higher than this. They could be way higher, but they could also easily finish where I put them. So I'm kind of playing it safe. 4 of their 8 signings have come from Turkey, which isn't really a shock, but they're not proven in England, so are they necessarily going to be able to cut it? Probably you would think so with the money that they're being spent. $4 million on one of their strikers. I'm not even going to try and attempt to say his name because I would completely get that wrong. And obviously the signing of Figueiredo, I would be slightly biased on that behalf, but I think that is an incredible bit of business for free as well. They've got one hell of a centre-half on their hands there. John McKelsey, come on, that is unbelievable how they managed to pull that one off. So they're clearly showing huge ambition and intent for the future. It has to be said, of course, they've lost Keane Rose-Potter and George Honeyman, which isn't really a shock. Both of those guys, particularly Keane Rose-Potter, really are way better than Hull. I think Honeyman probably should have stayed. I think the future's bright for Hull. 16th, now not so sure what the future holds for these guys, unlike Hull and Sunderland. Blackburn Rovers. New manager coming in, John Thomasson, who did do very well with Malmo in the Swedish league, but that's the Swedish league with the best team in the entire division probably, so it's difficult to really compare. He's never managed in England before. How is he going to be able to adapt to that? But not even just a manager. He isn't even really the problem. It's what's happened in terms of the transfer window, because they've not bought many players in and they've lost a lot of key personnel. Joe Rothwell, Bradley Johnson, Darryl Lineker, Ryan Giles, Ben Brereton, all but certainly will leave the club as well, and maybe even a few more. That is 5 key assets that have gone from the club. And you look at their centre-backs, they are looking incredibly weak after losing Lineker, because they've only got Danny Ayala and Wharton. That is it. Those two are the only ones that played regular football last season. The other two are 2 lads that went on loan to League 1 and League 2 clubs last season. So they are crying out for a bit of depth at centre-back. I do like the signing of Callum Britton, though. I think he was one of the few bright sparks in that Barnsley team the last few years, especially in their, playoff year. But I just think Blackburn are going to have a bit of a tough season, and they could prove me wrong with Thomason. Maybe he might galvanise that team of what they've got. Who knows? Because they're doing this before the transfer window's over, they might sign a load of players, but it doesn't look that way right now. And based off that, I'm not too encouraged by that. In 15th, Bristol City. A little bit higher than the last few seasons, but still quite boring and in the middle. And it's frustrating from their point of view, because they do have some good players. They genuinely do have some great players in this team. Lots of young players as well. The likes of Kane Wilson coming in from Forest Green Rovers, who was key to their promotion in League 2, getting 14 assists and 3 goals from right back is an incredible feat. And, I also do heavily like the signing of Kai Naismith. Not quite sure how they even pulled that one off. But I do think this season's a massive one for Nigel Pearson. Obviously, he's been at the club for a year and a half now. He needs to get it right this season. Will he last the season if it's going to be yet another year of just mid-to mediocrity? Bristol City will probably want to try and push on and do better than that. I do think their problem really the last few years, last season they scored 62 goals, which is a lot of goals for a team that finished just above relegation really, but they let in 77. I think we're understanding the problem. They can score, but they cannot defend. Now, this team, Nottingham Forest have got this team's number, and it's at the top of their address book, starred. That's how much we love ringing that number. Huddersfield Town. Bloody hell, what is going on with that club? I know, capitulation. Carlos Corbehan out the door. Toffolo, O'Brien. Wonder where those two have gone. Daniel Sinani, Levi Colwell have also left the club as well. That is a lot of key personnel out the door, and it's going to be very difficult to replace all of that. Naby Sarr and Pieper have also left the club, so in total that's 11 players that have gone. There's some Will Boyle from Cheltenham, Jin Mahoney from Millwall, Jack Radani, coming in from Wimbledon as well, but they're not proven. There's 2 lads there from League 1 and a guy that was a fringe player at Millwall. It just doesn't seem very ambitious. Stoke City, I just think it is really, really repetitive at this stage, and Michael O'Neill's got to prove people wrong now, because he's been at the club for a number of years. It just has not been clicking. Consistently been touted to be like a top 6 side, and then they just end up finishing pretty much where I predicted them to finish. And I'm just going to play it safe this year and put them there. And they've made some good signings, revamping their midfield essentially with Josh Laurent, Will Smallbone, Aidan Flint, like Gale's also coming up front. He used to be an absolute goal machine at this level. So I do think they've made some good signings, but it's just incredibly bland, repetitive, and something needs to change. In 12th, I've gone with a team that I could put higher, but I do think it does come down to the quality of manager, who I don't think is quite up to scratch. We're talking about Swansea City here. Russell Martin is not a bad manager, but he's just boring from whenever I've watched Swansea play. Now, just based off that one game when Forest beat them 5-1, they were one of probably the most boring team I've ever seen come to the City ground, because all they did was pass the ball around at the back constantly and do a ridiculous amount of time wasting and play acting, and that is one game, and it has definitely worked. The style of play at Swansea has worked, I'll make that clear. They've got some great results under Russell Martin, but it isn't consistent. They haven't got a plan B to that, and when it comes to their goalkeepers, it's looking quite thin. Andy Fisher and Stephen Bender, the only keepers they've got. Harry Darling and Nathan Wood have come in. Jarrett Allen's come to the club as well, come back to the club actually. Flynn Downs leaving is a bit of a big hit really, but You know, he wasn't totally irreplaceable. And then you look at Joe Pirro, you know, if they can keep hold of him, then they've always got a chance of doing all right. But I just think it's going to be another quite mediocre, you know, boring season for Swansea. And same where they were under the previous manager they had, it's pretty depressing. 11th, I like what's going on with this club. I do. Ryan Lowe and Preston North End. I think under Ryan Lowe, they've got a chance of actually doing something a bit more than 15th places. I've put them 11th. I didn't want to go too extreme. I think they're looking pretty good. They ended last season pretty well. They've got some good players already in that team. And Freddie Woodman coming into a place Iverson is probably one of the best replacements they could have got for someone that was so effective for that team last season. Robbie Brady ultimately is injury prone beyond words, but he's still a player with bags of experience at this level. Ben Woodburn, a good young player coming in as well. Obviously ex-Liverpool youth player. I do think it could be a very big season for Emil Rees up front. He got 16 goals last season up front for Preston North End, and in the absence of Cameron Archer, he needs to try and step up. And I feel they do need a few more players to try and improve that squad depth, because maybe they don't have the squad depth to really push for a playoff space. But I think in the long haul, there's quite a lot of optimism building at Preston, and I do think the future's pretty bright for them. 10th. This might shock a few, but it shouldn't, because the manager of this team is terrible. West Bromwich Albion. I do not think that it's suddenly going to click for Steve Bruce. I don't understand what people are putting in the playoffs, because I'm sorry, did you not learn from last season? It didn't help the fact that they had Ishmael at the start of it. That obviously was always never really going to work. He went there, didn't work. They got in Steve Bruce, probably one of the most unambitious appointments ever. Okay, maybe from the start, when he's not taken over a sinking ship, that ship will not keep sinking and he can try and keep it afloat. And maybe he can attempt to have a decent season, because ultimately he came into a team that was a mess. But this is the thing, right? It isn't just about the manager. That team should be getting top 6 with ease. I should make it very clear, I'm not doubting the team ability, I'm doubting the manager ability. Get a better manager in that matches the quality of the team, and I think Bruce will not last a season, then maybe they can do alright. Getting in John Swift and Jed Wallace are free are very good bits of business, but that's pretty much it. And you look at the goalkeeper situation, it is chronic. David Button and Alex Palmer, the only keepers. I just don't think that it's going to work for them. 9th, I was going to put this team a bit lower, but I felt like I was being a bit too harsh on them. QPR. They still have quality in this squad. They still have got lots of young players in there as well. The likes of Chris Willock and Elias Chair are still there as well. You've got Taylor Richards coming in as well as a good young player. Brand new manager Michael Beale, who does seem like quite an interesting and intriguing appointment to replace Mark Warburton, only ever been the assistant coach to Aston Villa and Rangers of lately, and he has had other roles as well, but he's not actually been a first team manager, so it's going to be interesting to see how it adapts. Clark Slater as well, by the way, excellent signing coming in from Chelsea, you know, getting him permanently as well is a real sign of intent. But they do need a striker. They've only really got Lyndon Dykes. All the others do not scream quality to me. They've lost Andre Gray and Charlie Austin, so they do definitely need to get in at least one quality striker, and then I think they will do alright. 8th place, Coventry. I think they'll do better than last season. I think they'll be a bit more convincing than last season, and obviously, you know, for the first half of it, they were in the playoffs quite convincingly, and they did drop away. They haven't really made the squad hugely better, but I think they will do better this season. 8th, I think, will be an amazing achievement for a team that were only in League 2 about 5 years ago, so fair play to them if they do this. They've still currently got hold of Callum O'Hare, Gustavo Hamer, Goalkeepers, of course. They've got in Casey Palmer from Bristol City, and Jonathan Panzer, you know, is obviously going to be an excellent addition for that team. If they can keep hold of O'Hare, it has been linked with Burnley recently. That would be huge. Hamer, I think, is a quality midfielder, seriously good player. I think it'd be another pretty solid season for Coventry, but if they do lose one of those key 3 players that I mentioned there, it might be a bit tougher and they may come lower potentially. 7th place, I think this team are going to do another very solid job, but not quite to the same level as what they did last season. Luton Town. I think there's still got something going on there. You know, Nathan Jones is still an excellent manager. They've made some decent signings. Colton Morris and obviously Corley Woodrow coming in from Barnsley, 2 excellent signings there. I think Woodrow, that honestly works. It works so well, that signing. You know, they've already got Adebayo up front, Horvath. I'm not even being biased. That is such a fantastic bit of business from Luton there. You know, they had quite a few injuries with their goalkeepers last season, so they've finally got a goalkeeper nailed down there. Even though it is a loan, it's a very solid loan. Kai Naismith obviously has left the club, but I still think they'll do alright. And yeah, I think maybe you could say because they pushed so hard last season, a club that ultimately were punching above their weights, maybe they might have just observed so much energy from that season, they might find it hard to recreate it and they could finish lower. I could see that happening, but they still have got a good team. I like the transfer business. I like the manager, you know. He can be a bit of a controversial figure, but he is a decent manager. So yeah, I think it will be a good season for them. 6th place. This might be seen as a little bit bold for me doing this because it's not a natural, obvious choice. Millwall. I don't know. I just think, listen, hear me out. West Brom should be in this top 6, but Steve Bruce holds them back, so therefore someone's got to replace them. I don't think Luton will do it again. I don't think Coventry are quite at that level. Millwall ended last season really strongly. The last few seasons they've been building towards a proper playoff charge and getting the top 6 ultimately. They've made some great signings. Zion Fleming is unproven at this level, of course, but overall, that is an excellent bit of business. He was linked with Forest actually last year. Wouldn't have minded him coming in. He will definitely try and replace that, you know, creativity and flair that Jed Wallace did offer. George Newman has also come into the club, you know, proven at this level, obviously. And I'm particularly excited to see how Charlie Cresswell and Jamie Shackleton do, both on loan from Leeds. I do like that. Berkophobe coming in permanently as well. And not only the new signings, they're players that they already had. Bradshaw was very good for them last season. Jake Cooper was an excellent centre-half for them last season as well. And I am a big fan of their right-back, Matt Namara. I think he always looks really steady whenever I've seen him play. So they've got good players already at the club and they've added more to it. So I just think there's something going on there and they're definitely going under the radar. 5th place, I've gone with Borough. A lot of people have been putting these guys 3rd, 2nd, even 1st, which I think is incredibly ambitious and bold because they probably are going to sort this out and they've got a good team, but they don't have a striker that screams goals in that team. They've got Ikpenzu and Chuba Akpom, for instance. Those guys are not going to cut it. They need at least 2 forwards before the season starts, or the very least before the transfer window closes. And you know, I like the signings of Ryan Giles, Darryl Leniher. They've got a lot of money for. Obviously Jed Spence, I don't know where he came from. Zach Steffen as well coming in as well. You know, can't really complain with that. Solid bit of business. They've made some great signings. Obviously got an incredibly good manager in Chris Wilder. They need to sort out the forwards, and I think they'll do very well, to be honest. I don't think they'll get top 2, but I think they'll be up there 100% this season. Watford. This is such a frustrating, strange football club because you just know 100% they will get rid of their manager. And call me old-fashioned, but that is the truth. They will. Rob Edwards is not going to last season. Plus, it's a total gamble. It's unproven. And the most disastrous thing about this is the way they went about getting him. It was so unprofessional. Going behind Forest Green Rovers' back and just saying, yeah, you come to us, without even confirming. And I just think it was really bad from Watford and Rob Green. And it says a lot about their approach in getting managers. They're not professional at doing it and they change them way too much. They have lost Hernandez, Foster, Sissoko, but they've still got Dennis and Sarr at the moment. I just think something's going to hold them back. They've signed Ben Hamer as a goalkeeper, by the way, and Bayo has come in from the Belgium League, who got 16 goals in that division last season, which is an interesting and intriguing signing. I don't know. I'm really contrasted with what to say about Watford, and I do think maybe you could say not only the fact that they're going to change the manager, but really when you look at the fact that he's a complete novice at this level, will it be able to work, you know? Now, this is where it gets interesting. 3rd place, I've gone with Burnley, Sean Dyche. Oh, I'm not here anymore. No, I'm in Nottingham somewhere. It's not Sean Dyche. Vincent Kompany obviously never managed in England before, let alone the Championship. It's a very tough league to throw yourself into as a manager. They've completely revamped their centre-backs, losing Ben Mee, Tarkowski, Nathan Collins, also their goalkeeper Nick Pope. It is just weird seeing Burnley sign young, exciting players, and honestly I think relegation is what they needed, just a chance to reset and just reevaluate what they want to be as a club. And ultimately you look at the signings that they've made, most of them are young, exciting, with potential. Scott Twine, McNally, CJ Riley, Bellis at centre-back. Murik is still pretty young ultimately. Ian Marston coming in as a right-back on loan from Chelsea. Obviously he was at Coventry last season and did do very well. Josh Cullen coming in from Kompany's old club Anderlecht. They've been pretty busy, and if they can keep hold of Cornet somehow, that would be absolutely huge, and they probably could even get top 2 just based on the fact that they keep him. But I like what they're doing. I do. The reason why I'm not putting them top 2 is because it isn't going to click immediately. They're players that are unproven. They're in the Championship for the first time in a number of seasons. I think they might actually do a little bit like what Sheffield United did last season, but not quite to the same effect, and just start slow but then really, really pick up as the season goes on. Second, Norwich. I'm not putting them first. The reason why I'm not is ultimately the team that I've put above them I think is more worthy. You probably guessed who it is. Dean Smith is a very good manager at this level. He's maybe not as equipped to get Norwich up like Daniel Farke was, because he's done it a number of times. Isaac Hayden, Gabriel Sara coming in as a record transfer probably does ultimately mean that they probably won't spend that much money after this. You look at the team every season going up and down, up and down. It's not evolving, and the centre backs are so familiar. Gibson, Hanley, they're just so repetitive, and they need to have a revamp. They really do, completely. The entire side, just get some fresh ideas in there. I'm still going to put them second because it is Norwich, and I still think they'll do very well. But maybe if I'm going to put them second, I may as well put them first. I was honestly tempted to put them where Watford were and put Burnley and Watford up by one place, but I didn't want to be too outlandish. By the way, shout out to Andrew Olabaradeli. I think he hopefully should get a lot of game time this season. If he doesn't, then that's a bit of a travesty, because I think he's a great young player, unbelievably good on FIFA. Even though he does not grow in overall at all, he gets like 75 overall and he just doesn't grow. He can win the Champions League with Norwich, like I did with them, and he was 75 rated. So I just thought I'd mention that. Excellent player. But in real life as well, not just on a video game, he is genuinely a player to watch, in my opinion, for Norwich this season. In first place, it is not Norwich City. It is Sheffield United. Yeah. Come at me. Why not? Do it. I think Sheffield ended last season incredibly strongly. We saw that firsthand against Forest. They were amazing against us in that second half. It was honestly horrible to watch that game because they didn't give in, and they just went for it, and they showed what a great side they are. And really, us and Sheffield started last season really poorly, and we both surged towards the end, and one of us was obviously going to have to miss out, and it was Sheffield. And I do think the team that missed out in that playoff game between us two is going to go on and have a very good year again next season and do even better. They've still got the same core group of players. They've still got Sander Berg in there. They've lost Gibbs White, of course, but they've still got Sander Berg. They've still got a really strong core group of centre-backs. Bringing in Kieran Clark for this level is great, particularly bringing in Ahmed Honzik. I'm butchering that totally. He literally used to play for Forest very, very briefly. That guy's been linked with huge clubs. He's been linked with like Chelsea and Man United recently, and he's gone to Sheffield United. He's going to absolutely steamroll that division, on top of Egan and Basham, for instance. And it does add a bit of youth to that back line as well. And they definitely need a striker. Billy Sharp's amazing, but he's 36. And McBurney and Brewster do not inspire me. Jefferson is not quite ready, is he? And they're going to be really good this season. And maybe it's a bit of a different one to put Sheffield first, but I just feel they've got the minerals. Paul Heckingbottom proved people wrong last season as well, and I think they've got the minerals to have a really, really strong season. So there we go. That was a long video, but hopefully you've enjoyed it all, everyone. Please don't slate me too much in the comments below. It is a really, really tough video to do. It's so nerve-wracking doing it, because I'm constantly thinking, is someone literally commenting right now, I hate your guts, I'm unsubscribing, even though I was never subscribed, but I'm still going to unsubscribe. I'm going to block you. Please, by all means, let in the comments below your predictions. I will still cover the championship, besides the fact that my team isn't in it. I'll still cover it. Please hit the like button, subscribe to Rads if you're new. It'll be vastly appreciated. And I'll see you very soon. There's plenty of stuff on the way, everyone. Come on, let's have it.